You brought up some claims about Kamala Harris. I want to finish that discussion. She said she didn't favor a ban on fracking now. The reality is she was one of the strongest proponents of that ban, so much so that when she was in California, she sued the Obama administration over granting fracking permits. She didn't just favor the abolition of private health insurance. She was a co-sponsor of the bill with Bernie Sanders as a U.S. Senator for Medicare for All for America.
Folks, it goes without saying that she's been the candidate for almost 2 months now, and still nobody really knows what Kamala Harris is running on. She's incredibly ambiguous on policy. It's almost like an art project that is open for interpretation. What does Kamala Harris really stand for? But this very recent admission from Bernie Sanders may tell us the true story, and it may also be something that is very damning for a Democrat campaign that is currently trying to masquerade as a bunch of moderates. So folks, I'm Vince for RTM News. If you enjoy the content, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe if you are new so we can keep bringing you this breaking news content. And that said, take a listen to what Bernie Sanders recently said about this big question of what does Kamala Harris stand for? What are her true values? Well, according to Bernie, they are very progressive ones. Take a listen.
Vice President Kamala Harris as a progressive. She has previously supported Medicare for All. Now she does not. She's previously supported a ban on fracking. Now she does not. These, Senator, are ideas that you have campaigned on. Do you think that she is abandoning her progressive ideals?
No, I don't think she's abandoning her ideals. I think she's trying to be pragmatic and doing what she thinks is right in order to win the election. My own view is slightly different. I think that in America today, there are a lot of people, rural people, working class people, who no longer believe that the United States Congress and government represents their interests. They're dominated by big money interests. So I think that there is something wrong personally when we are the only...
So I don't know if Bernie Sanders was almost intentionally trying to sabotage Kamala Harris in that clip, but regardless, that is incredibly damning, which is, first of all, Bernie Sanders acknowledges, no, Kamala Harris's values are still incredibly progressive. She has not changed, and that should not be a surprise to anyone, considering in her own words recently on that CNN interview, she herself also said her values have not changed. So folks, seems to me, if she's going to say that, if Bernie Sanders is going to say that, perhaps we should believe her when she says, my values have not changed.
How should voters look at some of the changes that you've made, that you've explained some of here in your policy? Is it because you have more experience now and you've learned more about the information? Is it because you were running for president in a Democratic primary? And should they feel comfortable and confident that what you're saying now is going to be your policy moving forward?
Dana, I think the most important and most significant aspect of my policy perspective and decisions is my values have not changed.
My values have not changed. Bernie says it, Kamala says it. It seems like, okay, we should believe her then. But the other very damning admission that Bernie Sanders makes in that interview is he admits what the conservatives have been saying, right? Because what has the conservative argument been? She's still very progressive. She's pretending to moderate some of her positions simply to win the election. Of course, the Kamala supporters would deny that. They would say, no, that's conspiracy theory. You're just kind of making that up. Well, there was Bernie Sanders on tape also saying she's still very progressive. She's just saying what she thinks she needs to do to win the election, and then goes on to insinuate that maybe she's being bribed off by big money. Not a good look. So again, folks, there you have it. Is Kamala Harris still a progressive? Yes. Is she just essentially lying to the public, trying to mislead the public for votes in the election? Also, according to Bernie Sanders, the answer there is yes. And folks, it shouldn't surprise anyone that Kamala Harris is still a very big progressive, considering the past 10 years, this is everything she has been fighting for. She has been a far leftist. In 2019, she was ranked as the most liberal United States senator of all of them, and then suddenly that ranking disappeared. This is what she's advocated for. So, should we take the sudden, unexplained flip-flop at face value, or is it more logical to assume she's gonna stand for the same exact things she has stood for the last decade? Folks, I think we know the answer there.
You brought up some claims about Kamala Harris. I want to finish that discussion. She said she didn't favor a ban on fracking now. The reality is she was one of the strongest proponents of that ban, so much so that when she was in California, she sued the Obama administration over granting fracking permits. She didn't just favor the abolition of private health insurance. She was a co-sponsor of the bill with Bernie Sanders as a U.S. Senator for Medicare for All for Americans. The reality is, when you think about the Green New Deal, she was the chief proponent, not just as a co-sponsor of the legislation, but going further and saying she would end the filibuster in the Senate to ram that through. So the reality is she can say what she wants to say now. Those are actions she has taken. Is someone allowed to evolve? Of course they are. But she deserves to explain exactly why she's changed those positions, exactly what her position is. If it's not a ban on fracking, what exactly is it? What exactly is her healthcare plan if she no longer favors abolishing private health insurance, which just 4 short years ago when she ran for president, she did? And that's the kind of scrutiny that's been missing. I think Donald Trump has received plenty of scrutiny, and I give credit to him for sitting for hostile interviews that Kamala Harris has not.
But folks, again, on top of that, I think another reason we shouldn't believe the current flip-flop, other than the fact that, hey, she's advocated these things for the entire last decade, is of course the fact that she, in her own words, said that her values have not changed. Okay? So we should believe that. And by the way, I think it's also worth noting that despite her little flip-flop on an issue like fracking, many of the pieces of Kamala Harris's current campaign platform, or at least what we think is her campaign platform because she is saying these things, right, are still at the current moment in 2024 very radical, very far left, very anti-American. Much of what the things Kamala Harris is doing, fracking, obviously that's the big part we're going to point out the flip-flop, but a lot of it still remains the same and still remains very radical.
He has lost his privileges and it should be taken down. And the bottom line is that you can't say that you have one rule for Facebook and you have a different rule for Twitter. The same rule has to apply, which is that there has to be a responsibility that is placed on these social media sites to understand their power. They are directly speaking to millions and millions of people without any level of oversight or regulation. And that has to stop.
I want to take the end of her statement there. They are directly speaking to millions of people without any level of oversight or regulation. And that has to stop. That may be the single most anti-free speech statement I have ever heard a political candidate give. She is saying that the government must provide oversight and regulation of any platform that, in her words, speaks to millions of people. Because if you are effective in free speech, if you reach a lot of people, the government is going to decide whether you get this privilege or not.
Yeah, guys, Kamala Harris is not a radical. She just wants to abolish the First Amendment. But no, she's really running a moderate campaign because she flip-flopped on fracking and then lied about the fact that she ever supported a ban on fracking. I think there's a reason a lot of Americans don't believe this. And there's a reason a lot of Americans fear the far-left consequences of what a Kamala Harris presidency would look like.
We did run into plenty of fervent Trump supporters who say the new challenger has only made them more enthused about the former president.
Does Kamala Harris getting in the race change the equation at all for either of you?
Change it, it ruins it. If she gets in, we're done. So
Done with what?
So that said, folks, now I would love to hear your thoughts. What do you think Kamala Harris's real campaign platform is? That is to say, if she is in the White House, what do you think she's actually going to pursue? Is she going to govern as some type of moderate like she's pretending? Is she going to be bought out by corporate establishment interests? Is she going to be bought out by progressive interests? Which one wins in the end? Let me know your thoughts in the comments, but I think it is pretty clear why many people are so fearful of a Kamala Harris presidency, because there's a level of unpredictability to it, but whatever direction it's going in does not seem to be that good. So that said, folks, until next time, I've been Vince with RTM News. Let me know your thoughts, and peace.